happy to join the fun today to introduce a UCI alumnus and alumnus of the GPSM program, Dr. Reza Mohammadi. So welcome, Reza.
Thank you.
And he was a PhD student in material science here from 2016 to 2020, then spent some time in the School of Medicine as a project scientist before transitioning to AbbVie, the AbbVie Allergan company here in Irvine, starting in September. And so he's graciously returned to tell us about his kind of career planning, career journey, what he did to prepare for this job, I guess, and you know, how he focused in and found and decided to do this work and what he's doing now. So Reza, why don't you start by, you know, just kind of giving some overview of your career journey and, you know, what you were thinking at the beginning of your PhD versus towards the end.
Wow, the last question kind of caught me off guard, but yeah, well, hi everyone. My name is Reza Mohammadi. I was a UCI graduate student not long ago. I graduated early in pandemic during March and April. It's my pleasure to join and talk to you, and also be involved with the GPS Biomed, GPS STEM right now. A little bit about my journey. I think before UCI, I was a research scientist for 2 years at Stanford. I was purely working on nanotechnology, material science, where I got a little bit involved in biology. And I never had a biology course in my life. I was pure engineer by training. And then I became more and more interested about the interaction of nanoparticles with immune cells, which, you know, after 2 years, I got this PhD position offer at UC Irvine, where then again, I continued understanding and working on the interaction of materials, nanomaterials, and also stem cells with the immune system in vitro and in vivo. So that became my passion. And right now my job is also, some of my, you know, projects here at AbbVie is involved with those in terms of thermal fillers, breast implants, which is actually very kind of, you know, you do your job, it's a job, but at the same time you enjoy what you're doing and you're passionate about it. About the second part of the question regarding starting my PhD, would I know where I'm going to end at? Definitely not. When I started my PhD, I was very passionate to become a faculty member, a passion that still is somewhere in my heart. But along the way, I realized that it is, while, you know, it is not very difficult. I don't know how to frame it, but to me, it became very difficult. You need to have a PhD, you know, you have a very successful PhD, and maybe in our field, 1 or 2 successful postdocs, and then writing grants. So towards the end of my PhD, I got involved with writing grants and, you know, becoming an independent scientist. Which I actually wrote 1 grant for NIH, which was a DP5. So UCI actually nominated me for that grant. And I wrote a grant and I went through the process, and then I realized it needs a lot of dedication. So in the meantime, I was involved with, you know, GPS STEM, and I was, you know, trying to explore other options. What are my options? Is that the only option I want to go? And then I realized working in industry, especially in an R&D setting, is not that different than becoming a PI in some sense. Let me tell you, what do I mean by describing my work right now? Right now, I have a budget. I have a couple of projects that I know they have goals. We have annual goals. And then I'm responsible to design studies. I'm responsible to conduct some of the portions of the studies. And I it's sort of acting as a PI of the project. So you don't have to do all those experiments, but you design the study, you have your controls, your outcomes, and then you randomize, do the power analysis, then you start the study, and then we work with the CROs or clinical research organizations. For example, if I need the flow cytometry or if I need RNA sequencing, I have a budget, I know which CROs I can work with. We do an agreement, we send the samples, they analyze the samples, they send the data back, then we put the data together, we present, then we have meetings with different levels of the management. So in that sense, for me as a very curious, passionate person in terms of research and being hands-on, it turned out to be very a happy environment here at AbbVie or in an R&D setting. So to summarize, no, I really didn't think I'm going to end up in the industry. I was very passionate about being in academia, but along the way, I realized that you can get what you want from multiple different avenues.
Okay, thank you for that introduction and thoughtful description of some of your thinking and career journey. What you describe in terms of your R&D experience in industry is typical these days of industry, but very different from what the students and postdocs in the audience are experiencing. If they need to do flow cytometry, they got to do it themselves, or figure out somebody who can help them on campus. Academic labs usually, they sometimes use CROs. We've done it once or twice in the past for certain things, but generally we have our own core facilities, or the labs just do it themselves. So, are you actually in the lab doing things, or do you have a team that's doing some things on site? Or if not, how do you spend your day? Is it just budgeting and then analyzing data? What does the day look like?
That's a great question. I guess in the position I have, which includes the scientist, senior scientist, those type of situations, I can say depending on the week or the month or the deliverables or what project needs, you generally have between 5 to 10 big projects. So your time is generally divided between meetings, organization, and conducting the experiments. So some of the critical experiments that we need, for example, if we need implantation or if we need injection in rats, those need some sort of expertise that we do it on-house. But some of the things that we have as, histology, for example, we never do histology as it's time consuming and, based on the budget we have and timelines, we can't justify the time we put on sectioning and staining. So we kind of do that in the CRO setting. What your day-to-day life is look like, it's a lot of responsibility, organization, and meetings. To just tell you what the main difference between academic type of job is, in academia, you go in the lab, you have your experiments, there's not much meeting going on, maybe with your PI and maybe with your peers. And then, you conduct experiment, data come back, and you have back and forth. But here you're mostly, since you're in multiple different projects, so basically you have maybe 4 or 5 PhD level projects. But since you can't do them because you're one person, right, or a team or consisting of 3 or 4 people, so the time consuming parts of the project you sort out to CROs. And the good news is money is not that big of an issue in a big pharma and an R&D level. So even last year, towards the end, we had the issue of how we can spend more. So since that's not the issue, you're just trying to save your time with having the meetings, thinking about ideas, coming up with new projects, coming up with new models, new analysis, and all those things. Your brain is in function. And hands-on, yes, you have some injections once in a while, you have some animal imaging, you have some in vitro assays. But the bright side of it, looking at it from the other side, you are flexible to work with your manager to adjust this. For example, we have people who enjoy working with animals, and we have people who really don't like working with animals. So it is flexible environment, to sort, to collaborate with somebody on the project that you have. So based on what you want, you can get what you want.
Okay, and it kind of sounds kind of exciting to have the resources to be doing 5 or 10 projects, PhD level projects at once. Are these projects that have the potential to be published?
Probably more than 95% of the projects, no, because when you're in an R&D setting, you're working on a product that will come into the market probably in 5 to 7 years. So in terms of competition and confidentiality, those would not be published. But there are other studies. In fact, in our group, every year we publish 3-4 papers. So there are other studies that are not product related or not confidential. Those get published. Yes, you will be involved in publications, and it's different. There are some groups that are working on very specific thing. We even have manuscripts in high impact journal like Nature and Science. Those are there too. But in terms of if the focus is publication, no. 95% of your work never gets published.
I think that definitely varies from group to group and company to company. And I know groups at Allergan and AbbVie that do a lot of publishing. But in those few that do come out of your group, are you involved in the writing, or it just goes to like a medical writing division, or against a contract group?
I haven't yet been involved in writing the manuscripts, but I guess what I've heard is you have your initial manuscript as you know how to, organize it. But then there are medical writers and then regulatory affairs, because when the paper goes out, it gives a message. So multiple stakeholders are involved. So they need to review and see what message you're giving out. But definitely there are resources like writers and that help support those type of activities.
Okay, well, we're 15 minutes in. I think we have all the participants. So I've asked a few questions. What I'd like to do now is open it up for a time to some other questions from our audience. And normally pre-pandemic, we would all be in a room together and we would see each other. So I would like for as many people to have their cameras on as possible. And definitely when you ask a question, if for some reason you can't use the camera or there's noise in the background where you are, you can use the chat. I'll ask it, but let's try to make this friendly and get to know each other. So who would like to start things off? You can raise your hand and I'll call on you. Okay, Elliot, looks like you've been ready for a while.
Hi, Reza. Thank you. Is your name David? Sorry, I haven't met you before, but just wanted to say hi.
Yeah, I'm David Fruitman. I'm the academic director of GPSM, and prior to that was the director of GPS Biomed, which was NIH funded. And as we transitioned, Harinder took on more responsibility, and he's the director of GPS STEM. So you probably know him or have seen him at these events, but I pop in from time to time.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, nice to meet you, David. Nice to meet you, Reza. So actually, I'm in like the very similar position as you are. I'm doing my PhD in material science engineering. I'm my first year student. So what I wanted to ask you about was like a little bit more about like how you got your job, because your job sounds like amazing. You get to do like 5 or 10 projects. You get to kind of like organize it, and you're not necessarily doing any of the grunt work. You're kind of like contracting other people and organizing more like big picture idea stuff. So I wanted to ask you, like, did you get like an internship at AbbVie before you went there, or like how did you know about this job opportunity, and like how did you get the connections? Because I feel like sending out resumes just randomly seems like a very inefficient way of doing it. So I wanted to get your perspective on like how you made those connections and what it's like.
Yeah, I mean, I remember me asking this question from everybody in the meeting. So no, I guess that's a very good question. Just one comment about how the job is amazing. Yes, it sounds amazing, but when you tend to organize multiple projects and then join different meetings and then change your hat in another meeting that is totally on a different. Sometimes in the meeting I find myself, oh, I'm not in the meeting and brain wise, oh, I need to focus. So it seems amazing, but when things get a little bit, hectic, you probably would change the terminology of being amazing. But anyhow, so what I've learned over time and tried to train myself was networking. And I guess networking is a quality that we have, all of us have to, no matter which level we are, we always have to expand our knowledge and our capability of networking. I was terrible at it, and I'm still not very good at it. I'm learning. But you have to, I think the best analogy that I've heard is it's like finding a parking lot. It's that competition is out there. There are a lot of good people for one position. Generally, there are 50 to 100 different resumes being sent out. There are headhunters looking for, to fill up the positions. I've never been involved in any internship, and I did a lot of networking with different people in different companies. Even I used GPS STEM resources. Whoever came to these talks, I used to network, and I'm still in contact with some of them. And we are now friends, and we chat here and there. We talk about projects and how things are here and there. So networking is very, very important for the future of your career, not only for securing a job, but also for the future of your career. But specifically this job, I didn't get it by networking. I don't know. I think one day I really wanted to get to AbbVie and on this group, but I didn't have anything. And I applied multiple times for anything they had, and I got rejected. But maybe my resume was in the system. One day somebody called me. It was actually 8 a.m. in the morning. It was middle of the pandemic. And they said, oh, we have this job for you. It is this, it's contract for the beginning. Do you want to consider it? And at the time I was like, yeah, sure. And it turned out, and then I came here, and then, the first 6 months is very important. You go through a lot of training, you go through a lot of, we understand the differences. And then if you're fine, if you were happy with the environment, and also the environment is happy with you, growing is not that difficult. So in short, I would try to apply as much as possible, because you never know. And at the same time, make sure that where you're applying to, when you're sending your resume kind of matches the job description. So for each job, you don't want to over exaggerate your capability, but you can't put all your capabilities in 1 page or 2 pages of a resume. So if you go for a company that is looking for somebody in biocompatibility, you want to, focus your resume more about the things you've done that are in biocom rather than mechanical properties of materials. But yeah, that's the way to do it. You should keep looking, searching, applying until you get. And internship generally, I've heard it's a very good point to start with. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Reza.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think
Keep in touch with me.
Those who participate in GPSM for a while and go to resume workshops and other networking events will learn that the job resume is very different than the academic CV. On the CV, you're trying to illustrate and emphasize all the papers, all the talks you've given, your scientific impact. But for a resume, you look at the job ad, you've tried to find the words that they're looking for and tailor your resume just to meet that. Most companies are not so concerned whether you had 6 papers or 4, whether it was in, the high impact or medium impact journal. They want to see what you can do. And that's not just science skills, but team, soft skills that you learn in the lab or in GPS STEM. So learning how to write a tailored resume is a key skill that people should work on continuously, but more as they approach transitions. Okay, other questions? Paige, go ahead.
Hi. So thank you for taking the time to talk with us and give us kind of your career journey. David mentioned in your intro that you did a project scientist role before transitioning into industry. And I know that it's like a hot industry question of like, do you do a postdoc or like a project scientist role in academia before making that jump? So do you think that having that project scientist role really helped you in your current job? Or was it kind of just like the situational thing of graduating in the pandemic that role came up first?
I guess that was more towards the later. So when I graduated and I talked to my boss to, he wanted me to stay for a while and kind of help out. And at the time, nobody knew, like I remember March to even May, June, nobody knew what's going to be the future, and the job market was very strange at the time. But I've seen recently, when I was applying not a while back ago, I've seen ads, especially in big pharma. They actually specifically say 2+ years. Some of them, like scientists, senior scientists, they require, or it is nice to have 2+ years of postdoc experience. But here, I've never heard that like my manager say, oh, this guy has postdoc, so it is better than the other person who doesn't have the postdoc. I haven't heard that. But looking at the ads, I've seen that postdoc is recently, based on my job search for the past year or two, is coming up. And if that's something you want to do, it would be great, because not only it will add you some manager or management skills, you probably have led teams of graduate students, so that's a positive value to your resume. But at the same time, you've been involved in another area of research which expands your capabilities. So that's a positive thing. But do you have to have that? I don't think so.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thanks.
Reza,
Okay.
I had a question.
Hi,
So you talked about how you got offered a contract position as a scientist, and you had to like the next 6 months, you kind of had to perform pretty well in order to get the job. Can you comment on some of the key objectives that you had achieved within the first 6 months?
Yeah, if I said I performed pretty well, I have to rephrase that.
That might have been
it
me
is
rephrasing.
it is more about, is this environment, because in company your growth is very important. It is not just you do what it is and we don't care about you, because you, after years of work and research, you are in a position that you're very valuable to the company. It is not like, oh, we'll let you go. You're an asset. And that's always come up in our meetings, that people are assets for the company. Products are developed by people. It's people, and this is what I deeply believe. So the first 6 months is generally, well, in Allergan it was different. Now AbbVie coming on board, so there is this evaluation period in some contracts that they want to evaluate you. It's not more because, oh, are you good enough, or are you good for us? It's just, are you a good fit for this type of job? Because some people come in, they don't really like it. It's just, they don't know where they want to end up. They come in, but R&D, for example, they're spectacular in writing, for example. They can be a great writer. They can be a great manager, for example, but they're not a good fit for R&D. So the first couple of months is important for you to see if this is what you want. That's the 80% of the story. And 20% is for the general management system to see if you are capable to take the projects, take the lead on, and grow in this system. If the answer is yes to both, then you're fine. And There are few cases, like very few cases that I've seen people come and they're not happy after a while. When you come in, things are generally go smoothly, especially if you're a UCI grad.
Okay, thanks, Kristen, for asking that question. Do we have other questions for Reza?
I have a quick question. Thank you so much, Reza. That was a really cool journey that you've had so far. So you mentioned that most of your days involve a lot of meetings. So are these meetings more like just like with your lab group discussing like the experiments you've done, like troubleshooting and all that good stuff? Or is it more with like people that you're talking to, more like updating on projects and like what the next step is?
That's a good question. I think a combination of everything. Let me give you a specific example. We have a group in Europe that they are responsible for one product development. We have another group in Israel. They're developing another product. So sometimes you have to wake up 7 a.m. and go to a meeting for, they have this product and you want to evaluate it. So our role is to understand which product makes sense for what application. And that's the biology, interaction of product and biology, immunology. That's our core expertise or function in AbbVie. So you have to go through that meeting and see their products and talk through what makes sense to do in terms of experiments, right?
Sure.
Are we looking at like, I don't know, like thermal fillers? Is it, where do we want to do a jawline, and then which animal model is good for that? Then you have other meetings that you present your data to the audience of your managers. Then you have other meetings to align on experiments. You have meetings with the CROs to tell them what you want. And then sometimes you also have meetings, like we had a baby shower last week, and we have also friendly meetings on Zoom. It's actually quite interesting environment. You have a lot of different meetings with different. So the important thing, if I want to say something that I am trying to pick up as quick as possible, is you need to, maybe in a day, you will be in 6 different meetings. And meeting is very, very important. You should be 100% there. Your brain, your experience, you should be there. And organization, is very, very important. So that's something, if I go back, I would definitely work more on my organization skills.
Yeah, I think people are getting used to multitasking during Zoom meetings. The larger the meeting, the more likely they are to be checking email or whatever in the background. During last fall, for me, it was watching the election returns. But we all have to do a better job of concentrating. I have a question, since Reza's visit today is, from a material science PhD, as part of our efforts to kind of expand the scope or the reach of our program to STEM disciplines outside biomedical science. Even though he's obviously a biomedical scientist, we're trying to draw in more students and postdocs from the School of Engineering, the School of Physical Sciences. So for the rest of you who are still on the line here, if you could just do a thumbs up if you're from physical sciences or engineering. I'd just like to see what fraction of the people attending are from these schools. You have 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, that's pretty good. Yeah, we'll keep, there has been a clear jump in participation from those schools. And if you or your colleagues have ideas of other life beyond the PhD speakers or career nights, just let us know. All right, other questions? I guess, for you joined in the pandemic and you've been there, nothing much has changed yet. I guess, phase 2, 3 research is ramped up. You can ask a second question, Elliot, but I'll just say that for the people who've been there a long time, are they expecting things to return to business as usual, or is it likely that, you know, a lot people are going to be having a lot of these 7 a.m. meetings with Israel still from home by Zoom? You know, is work going to change in an R&D environment at different levels post-pandemic, just because of how we've changed our practices? Because I know UCI is trying to, a lot of the admin meetings are going to continue to be virtual rather than have to take up space and people walk 15 minutes across campus to be together.
That's a very good question and a critical question. I guess there are active conversations not only with AbbVie but also in multiple companies, including Google, which is affecting a lot of different markets, including property market and everything around. So it is an active conversation right now. I guess what AbbVie's strategy is more coming back than working from home. But the way it works here is we have different phases. So depending on how critical your presence is, probably like UCI. For example, since we are very critical, I mean, the R&D is very critical. We didn't have that shutdown phase, and we have been here. We just closed a couple of days for the fire thing happened earlier. But other than that, we have been on site. And then unless absolutely you don't have anything, you just have meetings, you can work with your manager to stay home. But if you have stuff to do, you have to come on site. So it's a little bit flexible right now, but now starting from last week, we went to phase 3, which by definition, 50% of the campus comes back on site, including R&D and also other functions in the company. But our CEO's vision is more presence than working from home.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. You do a lot of better science just running into each other in the hallways than you do Zoom meetings. Elliot.
Yeah, if somebody else has another question, they should interrupt me. But Reza, so I was thinking about like more like your future career. So like you started this job recently, but where do you see yourself like in 5 years? Do you see yourself like moving up the company and like continuing this role, maybe becoming a manager eventually? Or do you see yourself starting your own company based on like research that you're doing? Or what do you, or maybe like going to academia? Like where do you see yourself?
That's a very good question, and to be honest with you, I didn't get a chance to think about it. What I can say is, what I am doing right now, I'm very happy in the environment. This is something that makes me happy. I feel productive. I feel impactful at the moment. But in terms of growth, I'm the type of person who really enjoys working with people, having people to report to me and I report to others. So I kind of like that environment. So I can see myself moving from hardcore scientist research staff more towards kind of directorship position. But there are definitely certain skills that I have to gain and work on. However, the more I think, the more I realize I don't want to be always in my office. I think I would want at least 10% of my time to be involved in lab and being hands-on, because that's also something that really makes me happy. And again, the good thing about this, about working in some companies in R&D is it is flexible for you, because the goal is to keep you happy, right? That's the goal, because if you're happy, you're productive. If you're productive, a company makes money. So the good thing about company is they work with you to offer you a setting that keeps you happy and productive.
Yeah, I have a second question. So David mentioned that you were very active in GPS Biomed, GPSM. what were some of the events or things other than networking that you felt were really beneficial to your career now, whether it was a course or a talk that somebody gave? Just kind of what are your recommendations from the program?
To be honest with you, my recommendation is whatever they advertise, join, because there are, for example, there are talks in medical writing. You'll say, oh, I'm not interested. But then you will hear stuff that picks up your interest. If you're exploring, I don't know, some people are set, oh no, this is what I want. I know, done deal. But for me, I'm still opening an option. I'm still looking for things that grab my attention. But to be more specific, I think resume writing, that was definitely very important. David also mentioned during our talk. There were other things, including salary negotiations, which I don't know. I was terrible in talking about money, and I'm still not very good at it, to be honest with you. But definitely, that's a skill. Negotiation is a very important skill, which I need to go back to the GPSM classes to join more. But those are the specific answers. But whatever you find, definitely everything is an opportunity. Anything. There are things that you don't know exist, and when you hear about it, well, that's fantastic. That's who I am. So now I hope I could answer your question.
Speaking of negotiation, I haven't received the 1% of your salary that I'm owed as director of GPS Biomed.
Oh yeah. Well, speaking of negotiations, I was hoping that we have some sort of salaries for people who join and share their. No, I'm just joking.
You're giving back your time, which is more than enough. So thank you. Someday when our graduates are running their own companies and filing away $100 million a year, we'll ask them to make donations to keep the program running.
Sure, that would be good. Yeah, I actually saw the news yesterday. I got an email from UCI that they raised $1 billion from alumni. That was great.
Yeah, that's really impressive. Some of it comes in large chunks, but like the Samrelli gift for the school, College of Health Sciences, but still $1 billion is a lot of money. Halfway to the goal. Okay, any other questions? Are there any topics that we haven't touched on yet, Reza, that you wanted to bring up?
I guess one thing I wanted to mention was don't be shy, especially in networking, by capitalizing on the importance of network. There are different people out there. Somebody may not like to network with you, and that's totally fine. That's understandable. But don't let that, hold you back. You would get a lot of experience, and when you change your environment to work with different people have different thoughts about you, about work, about collaboration. So don't hold off on that, and then feel free. I don't know if you have my LinkedIn, email. However, if you have any question, I would be more than glad to help out if possible. Feel free to network, add me on LinkedIn, be in touch with me, and definitely if things are, if we have opening, I would definitely share with her and David, or our alumni, and be proactive. Just search for the parking lot and search for it. One day, it doesn't matter how good your car is. It's just the opening, and it's just the chance and luck that you end up in that spot. So.
All right, Elliot has another question.
Sorry, I'm asking so many questions. I don't know, I'm excited. So I remember you were mentioning earlier about how you have difficulty with organization skills. Does that lead into procrastination and how would you, like, what advice would you have given yourself, like, 5 years ago when you're doing your PhD, like how to be better at organizing, and like what organization skills are you specifically talking about? Like, is it your time management, and like what are some skills that you've like gained or that you're learning now to deal with that?
So let's say that's a great question. That's something that I'm actively working on right now. And again, right now you have probably maximum 2-3 projects that you're working on. So you remember most of the details at any time, right? So you don't need to take notes, for example, on, I met with my PI, this was a decision, and but when that expands, when you have 10 projects working with multiple people on different things, different goals, different chemistry, different biology, and then every meeting has a conclusion. There are 10 different people there. There are people from medical affairs, there are people from production, and then there's a conclusion there that this is what we want to follow up, right? Then 30 minutes later, you have another meeting that you have to present on one of the other projects. And 1 hour later, there's another project on something else. So you go crazy. Oh, what is the top? Where did we, finish last conversation? So what I learned is we use Microsoft Calendar. So I know before the week, I exactly know my meetings. And in each meeting, there is a place. It's actually fabulous. You can take notes of that or take minutes of the meeting. So right now, what I'm trying to do, rather than writing on the paper, which is what I had to use in my graduate school and postdoc, take notes on every meeting. So 2 minutes before getting to the meeting, you go to the same setting of meetings that are on that topic. You open your notes, then you see the history of conversation. Oh, this was my action item. This is what I have to do. Because questions come, oh, Reza, do you remember last month we talked to send the samples to there for this test? Did we talk about it? But then you can, when you have your notes, you exactly know what is expected from you. And it's the art of articulation, how you articulate what you have done and your action items in terms of organization.
Yeah, I've switched to taking electronic notes. I use GoodNotes, but I like that calendar option where everything is just linked to a particular string, meeting string or calendar color or something like that.
I had no idea you could do that. Like, I mean, I use iCalendar, but I don't know. They might not have that option, but if it doesn't, then I'll get a calendar that does. That's cool.
Yeah, ours is a Microsoft Office. It's like Google Calendar, but then it's sweet because then you can start a meeting and then you can see people's times. Like right now, I can see whoever I want. I can see what they're up to tomorrow. So let's say if I see like 30 minutes and I need to talk to them, I invite them to a meeting and then I send the link. And then in that meeting on top, there is a application called OneNote that you can open up, and then it shows what meeting, what date, who were present, and what you took as notes. And that is somehow helping out. But